The Democratic Alliance has reiterated its stance on the national dialogue, labeling it an initiative driven by the ANC to regain lost voter support. Now, in a letter addressed to former President Thabo Mbeki, party leader John Steenhuisen criticized the dialogue as an expensive talk shop that lacks transparency, inclusivity, and tangible outcomes. The DA said the firing of Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield and ongoing double standards in the GNU were key reasons for its withdrawal. Now, this comes after Mbeki wrote an 11-page open letter addressed to Steenhuisen, describing the party's move as misplaced and very strange indeed. The former president accused the DA leadership of political inconsistency and explained why he thinks the dialogue is both legitimate and necessary. Steenhuisen also raised concerns about the projected 700 million rand cost. Now, let's discuss this with Central University of Technology lecturer Leeto Nthoba and political analyst Professor Zamo Mbandlwa, who join me on the line. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika.
Good morning.
Now, Leeto, let me start with you. When you read both letters, what's your sense of what's really happening between these parties and the state of our government right now?
I think we are in a place, we're in limbo basically, because even in reading President Mbeki's letter, I still part company with him at the part where he says there's a necessity for this kind of talk shop, right? Because at the end of the day, all of this doesn't, if you look at South Africa, the paradigm hasn't changed that much since 1994 for us to then merit a place to ask South Africans, what do you need now? The same things that were needed in 1994 are needed now, and some more than others, right? And so you can't say that this is some kind of legitimate talk shop that we need to have because South Africans and their political leaders are so disconnected. But secondly, the DA now has shown its colors in the GNU, that it was never there to actually be a governing partner, but a prefect of the governing party in order to try and somehow show their reining in of these people that they assume to be corrupt and unworthy of those government positions, because they knew about this talk shop that is coming up way before the populace in South Africa. They only started to throw the tantrum when one of their people was chased out. So let's assume that this person was not chased out and taken away from his deputy ministry. Then what? Would we still have the same outcome? And I think in thinking about that, that's when you start to see the DA in another light, that in this instance, what they are doing is somehow not articulating their position the way they should be.
So essentially that speaks to a double standard. Now, Professor Mbandlwa, if I may bring you in here, the former president seems to believe deeply in the power of structured dialogue. Is this consistent with his intellectual approach to politics throughout his career?
Thank you very much, Master Chaba. I would like to first start by saying I don't believe that the national dialogue or national convention is a talk shop. That's number one. And secondly, I think in South Africa, we've been measuring the performance of our government on the basis of the election outcomes, which I think is the major problem. If you look at the South African population, we have about 64 million people. And out of 64 million people, we have 42.5 or so million people who qualify to vote. But only 27 million people who are registering to vote and people who are voting as of last year. Now, that simply tells you that, or tells us that the majority of people in South Africa who are actually suffering are not participating in the election process in South Africa. So there is a need for the leadership in all angles to sit down and look at the possible ways to address the challenges of South Africans. Now, this national dialogue is going to open that room for improvement to say, over the years, there has been some elections, several elections taking place, but problems still exist what could be another way of dealing with these problems? And now the main issue as well is that we place the future of the country primarily on the hands of politicians. And I think that should not be the approach, because politicians in the main come and go, but there's little that they can do to change the lives of the majority of South Africans.
Now, Leeto, on the back of what the professor has just said, do you think that Mbeki's involvement will give the national dialogue more credibility, given his stature as former president and his experience with reconciliation processes?
I think it does give it a lot of credence for some people in some quarters to listen to. But still, the question remains, like the professor says, there's a large contingent of South Africans who don't participate in elections per se, right? But then do those people, or will this talk shop reach those people in the places that it does? Because the government rarely actually goes to the people who are agnostic of the government and its processes. And so how will this be different from any other thing that Cyril Ramaphosa has done? He's had investment drives. He's had all of these things that have seemed to be inefficient, except for them being people talking at each other. And here again, you're going to go and ask the populace to tell you what they need, as if you don't have government departments that report back to the political principal. And this is where I think my biggest fear comes. It means that the departments that are responsible for reporting to the president are not reporting accurately, because those departments should have expressed the needs of the people without us going to go to the people and asking them what their needs are. If people need housing, there's a department for that. If there is a scourge in gender-based violence, there is a department for that. And so in all of these things, if the president still doesn't understand, or the presidency still doesn't understand the needs of the people, then it's a worrying proposition for South Africa either way.
All right. Now, Professor, the DA is calling Mbeki's letter confirmation that the national dialogue is an ANC creature. Why would the DA link the national dialogue to the ANC when the DA is itself part of the GNU?
I think that goes without saying that the initiative of the National Dialogue or National Convention is an admission of the GNU, is the admission of the GNU leadership that things are not right, things are not happening the way they should be. So in other words, there is an additional support that is required by the GNU. And what really worries me is that the letter from the leader of the DA, which indicate that they are not willing to be part of the national dialogue, is contrary to what they've agreed upon when they've joined the GNU, because the GNU, by virtue of having the GNU, shows that it's a national dialogue whereby there are different political parties who are coming from different ends to champion the agenda of transforming the country and also improving the lives of the people. So
no,
what really...
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what really become very problematic, I would like to agree with Leeto when he said the people that are part of the national dialogue or national convention are the people that are not primarily going to give us a go-ahead to address the issues of South Africa. Simply because if you look at the list of the people that have been nominated or supported by the president to be part of the initiative, there are so many people, in fact, in majority, they have been given opportunities to transform the country or to better the lives of the people, but they have not done so. But on the basis of them now coming back and tell us what needs to be done when they had an opportunity to do so, or if they failed to transform the country or they have not done much, what is it that they are going to do now? Or what are the new ideas that they are going to bring on board? But also, if you look at the initiative and the letter that was written by the former president, it tells us that the organizations or the civic organizations are the ones that are driving this agenda, not politicians. Politicians are there to give support, or political parties are there as part of the team, but the foundations are the ones that are hands-on in this particular initiative.
Now, Leeto, we're seeing the DA caught between wanting to be in government, but also wanting to maintain their opposition identity. Is this sustainable?
it's unsustainable because you remember when the elections happened, we had this conversation to say the DA is in a precarious position where they don't want to be seen to be joining in or having their lot in with the ANC. At the same time, they want to be seen as outshining and excelling over and above the ANC and what the ANC has done. And so now, when you get to middle of the road initiatives like this, because this convention is not going to be anything spectacular where a DA minister might outshine a ANC minister. It's just a middle of the road exercise asking South Africans to contribute to their well-being. And so there's no place to shine, there's no place for excellence or to show the brilliance of the DA. And this is where they start to suffer because now it looks like you have your lot in with the ANC. Because now, if you look at the GNU, now have to all participate. But for instance, EFF can choose to not participate in this process because they're the opposition. They'll say, no, but we can't give you all our tactics to win. Let's see how you become the winners after you're elected. We will take our wins when we get elected. So they're in a very, very bad place for people who want to outshine others. And I think it's going to be unsustainable going forward because the strains they keep putting on the very loosely tied GNU is one that I don't think that the coalition itself can take, because you even hear other coalition partners talking down to them or talking badly about them because of how they're behaving. And that's going to be the ultimate measure of how sustainable the GNU becomes.
All right. Now, my next question is for the both of you. If you can answer it as briefly as possible, does the 700 million rand cost make sense? Leeto?
I come from a very small town called Welkom, which is waning in resources. 700 million in any direction that doesn't go to alleviating some of the problems in this town, for me, is always unjustified. But if somehow there's a payoff, we might say something different.
Okay. Professor, 700 million, does it make sense?
Not at all. I think it's unjustifiable, and there's a lot of money to use if we are looking for solutions to a problem, and some of those problems include money. So how do you then invest more money in looking for a problem to get more money? So for me, it's a what you call a scheme or something to use such money to get another money or solutions to get money. So for me, it's a problem.
I'd like to pull up our poll question at this point. We are asking South Africans in our poll question this morning, will the ANC and the DA reach a harmonious working relationship in the GNU? Is it a yes, because they have to? Is it a no, because the GNU is a sham? Or the GNU collapse is imminent? So we've been asking our viewers, and we continue to ask our viewers to vote via our X page at Newzroom 405, or by grabbing the code on your screen, so you can engage with us in that sense. So I think essentially the both of you have answered that question. And now, to continue the conversation, now the next thing that we do know, the DA, former President Mbeki wrote that the DA's decision to boycott the national dialogue, he called it misplaced and strange. So, Professor, what do you make of this argument that it would make more sense for the DA to leave the GNU entirely rather than boycott the dialogue?
Yeah, certainly. I fully agree with the former president. You see, as I've indicated earlier on, GNU, by its nature, is a combination of different political parties. And by virtue of having different political parties, they are coming from different ends with different ideas. So that alone is a national dialogue without even saying it. Now, if you are saying now you are not willing to be part of the formalized national dialogue where it's not only now about government, but it's about finding solutions to the problems of the country. So for me, I think that approach should have been used by the DA to say, because they are already in, they should then find ways. They shouldn't use their issues with regards to the minister or deputy minister and their arguments in government to boycott this initiative.
And I'd like to ask you this question now, Leeto. Can a government that can't even agree on having a national conversation actually govern effectively for the people of South Africa?
It can't, because the formation of the GNU was not made to govern. And that's what they didn't come together to govern South Africa. They came together as a ragtag group of people, the DA wanting to keep EFF and MK party out. So they didn't come to govern, they wanted to keep others out. The ANC wanted to consolidate power. So they were not bringing in the DA to govern, but to consolidate the power to govern. And all of those factors meaning that to this day, none of them actually came together to govern. And that's why on a weekly basis, we ask ourselves questions about ministers, whether or not they'll respect policy positions that have been taken, like Bella, because they don't agree with them. And so we now keep going back and forth between the conviction of the party, the minister's personal convictions, and the needs of the people in South Africa. And that is always going to be unsustainable, because now we're going three ways to go. We're taking 3 steps to take 1 step forward. And that's never going to be sustainable.
All right. And Professor, very briefly, there's an interesting irony here. John Steenhuisen's own department is supposed to help oversee this dialogue. He's boycotting. How do you think that's going to work practically?
Yeah, this is very difficult, because now you see there's a conflict of interest here. The president is supporting the initiative of the national dialogue. At this point, it's a national convention. And the former president is supporting, and the majority, I would assume, that of the cabinet ministers will not fight against this one. But the minister that should be the driving force, that should be in the forefront supporting this initiative, is not there to support. I think that will then create a very serious conflict between the minister and the president. But again, the conflict is there already. There has been a conflict from the word go, from the beginning. You recall that there had several meetings where the DA had some demands and the demands were not met. There were some compromises there and there. So these issues will always persist, especially because they have different political ideologies, different backgrounds, different ideas on how the country must move forward. And also the issue of the inclusion criteria that is used by the ANC and the DA are completely different in terms of the economic inclusion. So I think the minister will have to decide whether they want to toe the line, because the boss of the minister is the president. We cannot shy away from that.
Now, speaking of the boss, in today's Sunday Times newspaper, on the front page, it is said that the president has said that if Steenhuisen does boycott this national dialogue, it will be seen as insubordination. So, Nthoba, and very briefly, please, do you think that President Mbeki is going to fire Steenhuisen? Because that is a very serious thing. I mean, Ramaphosa, excuse me. Do you think President Ramaphosa is going to fire Steenhuisen?
He's well within his rights to fire John Steenhuisen. But then, where to from there? Because you can see that the DA acts spitefully whenever they're acted against. So what act of spite might they bring up against the president and the GNU after they are kicked out, or their leaders kicked out of the GNU?